Hello, my dear friends and family. I'm Operator Starsky with new updates on Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Over the past week, from Novgorod to Rostov, Ukrainian campaign of deep strikes, designed to make Russian citizens happier and more democratic, brought joy and fireworks all over the terrorist federation. Ukrainian drone operators were practicing landing Russian helicopters with FPV drones and playing a game called Send Your Russian Husband to Ukraine, win a free Rusty Lada from 1970s and a pound of fish. More on that in today's report, my friends. You're watching the Frontline Focus. Let's roll. First of all, on March 18th, Ukraine struck two aviation facilities deep inside Russia, one in Ulyanovsk region and one in Novgorod. These plants were involved in producing and repairing military transport and cargo aircraft, sometimes referred to as Russian flying caskets. Reuters reported these sites were around 800 kilometers from the border, which, by the way, is another reminder that the Russian terrorists can no longer feel comfortable and safe, even far from the front, which is beautiful. And then came one of the biggest drone waves. Russia said Ukraine launched one of the largest barrages in at least a year, with hundreds of drones over several days, including major pressure on Moscow. Even Shoigu himself admitted that Ukrainian drone development has reached the point where no Russian region can feel safe. I mean, after invading another country for 4 years and bombing civilians every day, bragging in the social media about taking Kupiansk, Kyiv, Kherson, and basically fighting in the outskirts of Lviv, the Russians suddenly found themselves getting used to daily air alerts, sirens, and those amazing frequent fire shows that they can observe on the horizon almost every night. And if already Shoigu is openly saying that the war shifted from Ukraine to Russia, where it all started, well, maybe the war isn't really going well for the Russian terrorists. Let's just admit this fact. Now, to the freshest part, today Ukraine's general staff said Ukrainian forces struck the Transneft oil terminal at Primorsk in Leningrad region and the Bashneft Uralneftekhim refinery in Ufa. Primorsk is a very important Russian export terminal on the Baltic, so we can say that it was another very practical reminder that if Russia wants to fund war through oil exports, Ukraine can make that process much more emotional, much more expensive, flammable, and fun. Also, let's talk about the most recent Russian aviation losses. We're talking 2 Ka-52 helicopters and one airplane. The Ka-52 helicopter that was destroyed by a Ukrainian FPV drone in the Donetsk region was downed by the operators of the glorious 59th Brigade, who showed their footage. Ukrainian defenders reported that the terror Russian helicopter made an emergency landing after being hit, and Commander Robert Brody said the crew tried to escape but was later found and turned into a fresh Russian fertilizer by Ukrainian drone operators. And the funniest fact is that the Russian social media got very upset about that, as if those pilots were flying around and dropping candies and chocolate bars for children. The fact is, they were flying a Ka-52, one of the machines used to launch rockets at Ukrainians, at civilians, at Ukrainian defenders, and it means that one less attack helicopter is one less chance for some Russian hero to murder Ukrainian civilians and then expect sympathy on Telegram. Now, switching to the frontline updates, the latest battlefield analysis confirms that the Russian invaders have likely begun their highly advertised spring offensive against Ukraine's fortress belt in Donetsk region. The Russian terrorists are also setting conditions for heavier operations, possibly towards Kramatorsk and Kostantinivka. But the fact is, they are unlikely to seize the fortress belt in 2026. In Zaporizhia, for example, and Liman, numerous Russian mechanized attacks are being deflected, with huge numbers of Russian millionaires transforming into carrots and tomatoes. Frankly speaking, the squeal in the Russian social media is absolutely enormous these days. Apparently, they didn't expect to get wasted so badly. One of the reasons it's happening is the fact that Ukrainian defenders stockpiled impressive number of FPV drones, and basically every successful hit is precise and recorded in glorious 4K. Situation around Slovyansk is unfortunately a bit more serious. Ukrainian services have begun compulsory evacuation of children from parts of the city because, besides missiles and artillery, Russian terrorists frequently use their FPV drones to hunt civilians. At this point, Slovyansk is only about 20 kilometers from the front line, and drones now make even those rear areas dangerous for civilian population. Basically, we can see the copy-paste of the situation in Kherson. But despite Russian pressure in this direction, Ukraine is still holding the key line. And now to the bigger military news of the week. Reuters reported that Ukraine deployed 228 drone operators to 5 Middle Eastern countries: the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan. Their mission is to help intercept Iranian drones and advise on air defense. And also, according to Reuters, the US and Ukrainian negotiators met in Miami to discuss the drone deal between two countries. And I find it kinda interesting that while some people in Washington talk down to Ukraine, the American army itself is learning Ukrainian experience in terms of air defense, anti-drone warfare, because Ukraine has become one of the world's main experts of modern warfare, which is sad for the arrogant people, but good for reality. For example, Pete Hegseth recently attempted to justify why exactly the US forces and their partners in the Middle East are suffering from the Iranian drones and missiles so much. He said that American military aid to Ukraine depleted the US stockpiles. And when you listen to Mr. Hegseth, you probably imagine the US sending thousands and thousands of interceptor missiles to Ukraine, but the facts obliterate this narrative. The media reported that Ukraine's stock of Patriot missiles was critically low already in late February, and that allies committed only 37 PAC-3 missiles. At the same time, Associated Press reported about 1,000 Patriot missiles used by Washington and partners in the first 96 hours of the Iran operation. So the real picture is not Ukraine burning the American stockpile of Patriot missiles. The picture is that with the beginning of Iran operation, the Patriot demand exploded everywhere, and the US itself is now proving just how fast these missiles disappear in real high-intensity combat. Frankly speaking, statements coming from the White House recently can raise a few eyebrows. For example, last week Tulsi Gabbard said that Russia has maintained the upper hand in its war against Ukraine. I'm not really sure if Tulsi Gabbard even received reports on Ukraine liberating 8 settlements or regaining control over 400 square kilometers of its territory since January, or Ukrainian deep strikes, or even Russians charging into battle on horses. But, if this is Russia's upper hand, then apparently it's attached to a very drunk body and is just punching itself for 4 years straight. I mean, tell Russian horsemen that Russia has the upper hand, okay? Because apparently they're not aware of that. And with that, my dear friends and family, this is the situation for now. The front line remains difficult, especially in Donetsk area, but the picture is not the one that Kremlin propaganda or some politicians are trying to sell, especially those who's never been to Ukraine themselves. And Russia keeps burning and proving that even with all its screaming, all its threats and its meat assaults, those horse charges, it still cannot solve the basic problem. Ukraine's will to survive is much stronger than Russia's desire to kill. My dear friends and family, I wish you all a beautiful day. Don't forget to subscribe to stay informed about the most important updates, and also share this content to help Ukraine be heard. I'll see you in the commentaries. I'm Operator Starsky. As always, be safe.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.